Divorced my husband the day after our wedding because he smashed my face into our cake after I told him not to. Then his whole family says I'm overreacting. I really need some perspective here because I'm starting to feel like I'm going crazy with everyone telling me I'm overreacting. I'm not sure if I'm the a-hole in this situation, but this has been eating me up inside and I don't know who else to talk to. I met Jake about 4 years ago at my cousin's birthday party. He was charming, funny, and we hit it off right away. We started dating and things moved pretty quickly. He was always the life of the party, constantly joking around and making everyone laugh. I loved that about him at first, how he could light up a room and make everyone feel comfortable. After about 3 years together, he proposed. It was during a vacation we took to this little beach town. Nothing huge, just a nice dinner and a walk on the beach where he got down on one knee. I said yes immediately. I was so happy and excited to start planning our future together. Looking back, there were signs I should have paid more attention to. Jake had this way of sometimes taking jokes too far. Like this one time when we were at his friend's birthday, he pushed his face into his own birthday cake as a joke and everyone laughed, but the birthday guy was clearly embarrassed. Or when he replaced his mom's sugar with salt on April Fool's Day and she ended up having to throw away an entire batch of cookies she was making for some church event. She was pissed, but he just laughed it off. I always brushed these things off because they seemed harmless enough, and he was always so apologetic afterwards if anyone got genuinely upset. He'd say things like I was just trying to make everyone laugh or it's just a joke, don't be so serious. And I believed him. I thought he just got carried away sometimes but meant well. It all started going downhill a few months before the wedding. I noticed Jake watching these stupid prank videos on his phone all the time. He would laugh his ass off at these videos showing brides getting humiliated, their faces smashed into cakes, embarrassing photos of them being shown to everyone during speeches, grooms pretending to drop the rings or run away at the altar, that kind of shit. One night, we were sitting on the couch and he kept showing me these videos, laughing hysterically while I just sat there not finding any of it funny. I immediately told him I didn't want anything like that at our wedding. I was very clear. I said I'd spent a lot of money on my makeup and dress and didn't want either ruined, plus I didn't think publicly humiliating your new spouse was a great way to start a marriage. He just laughed and said, "Don't worry babe, I'm not planning anything like that. I know you're too uptight for that kind of stuff." The uptight comment annoyed me, but I let it slide because at least he seemed to understand that I didn't want any pranks at our wedding. I believed him, but over the next few weeks I started noticing weird shit. He kept having these hushed phone calls with his friends. He would immediately hang up or change the subject when I walked into the room. At first, I thought maybe he was planning some sort of surprise for me, like a honeymoon thing or something. Then he suddenly wanted to be involved in wedding decisions he previously couldn't care less about, especially the cake and the photographer. At the time I was just happy he was showing interest in the wedding planning because before that he'd left everything to me. I thought maybe he was finally taking our wedding seriously and wanted to be more involved. I was actually happy about it. But then I started noticing strange comments from his friends. When we were at a dinner with his best friend Tom and his girlfriend, Tom kept making these weird comments about how the wedding would be one to remember and go down in history. They'd look at each other and snicker, and Jake would kick him under the table. When I asked what was so funny, they'd just say inside joke and change the subject. Another red flag happened when we went for our cake tasting. Jake kept asking weird questions about the sturdiness of the cake and how much weight the frosting could hold. The baker looked confused, and I just assumed he didn't know much about cakes. He also insisted on a certain type of thick frosting that would photograph well. I was just happy he was participating, so I went along with it. About 2 weeks before the wedding, Jake's brother Frank came over for dinner. Frank has always been the complete opposite of Jake, quiet, thoughtful, and serious. We were talking about the wedding plans, and Frank asked if we were doing any special traditions. Before I could answer, Jake made some comment about special surprises and winked at Frank. Frank didn't seem amused and asked what he meant. Jake just brushed it off, but Frank gave him this long, hard look that I didn't understand at the time. The day before the wedding, I had this weird feeling in my gut that something was off. I couldn't shake it. I pulled Jake aside after the rehearsal dinner and specifically reminded him that if he pulled any kind of prank at our wedding, especially anything that would ruin my appearance or embarrass me, I would seriously reconsider our relationship. He got all defensive and was like, "Jesus, you're paranoid, I already told you I'm not doing anything." Then he made me feel guilty by saying I was ruining the mood before our wedding by assuming the worst of him. I felt bad for not trusting him, but obviously my instincts were right. The morning of the wedding was hectic but exciting. My bridesmaids and mom helped me get ready. My makeup artist spent almost 2 hours on my face, and I felt beautiful. My dress was perfect, I'd saved for months to afford it, and it fit like a glove after 3 separate fittings. Everyone kept telling me how gorgeous I looked, and I was so excited to see Jake's face when I walked down the aisle. The ceremony went perfectly. Jake looked handsome in his tux, and he actually teared up when I walked down the aisle, which made me cry too. We said our vows, exchanged rings, and had our first kiss as a married couple. Everything felt magical, and I thought all my worries had been for nothing. Then came the reception. Everything was going great at first. We had our first dance, the speeches were lovely, though Jake's best man Tom made a few comments about Jake's sense of humor that made me a bit nervous, and the food was amazing. Then it was time for the cake cutting. The cake was beautiful, 3 tiers with white fondant and these delicate sugar flowers that matched my bouquet. Everyone gathered around to watch us cut it together. The photographer was positioned right in front of us to capture the moment. Jake and I held the knife together and made the first cut. The crowd cheered, and I was smiling so hard my cheeks hurt. Then it happened. As I was about to feed Jake a small piece of cake, I felt his hand firmly on the back of my head. Before I could react, he pushed my face hard into the cake. Not just a little nudge, but forcefully shoving my entire face into it. My makeup was completely ruined, and there was frosting all over my face, in my hair, and all down the front of my dress. The worst part? The whole fucking room erupted in laughter, with Jake laughing the loudest. I couldn't believe what had just happened. The photographer was snapping picture after picture, and Jake had his arm around my frosting-covered shoulders saying, "This is gonna be our wedding photo." Like it was the funniest thing ever. I was in complete shock for a few seconds, then I just turned around and slapped him across the face. The laughter immediately died down, and Jake looked stunned, his cheek red from where I'd hit him. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" I yelled, tears already streaming down my face and mixing with the frosting. "I told you not to do this." Jake's expression quickly changed from shock to annoyance. "It's just a joke, babe. Calm down, you're making a scene." That's when I lost it. I stormed off, pushing past guests who were now awkwardly standing there not knowing what to do. I heard my mother calling after me, but I didn't stop. I ran straight to the bridal suite and locked the door behind me. I stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized myself. My makeup was ruined, with streaks of mascara and frosting covering my face. My hair, which had taken hours to style, was now sticky with frosting. And my dress, my beautiful, expensive dress that I'd spent months searching for, had a huge frosting stain down the front that I knew would never come out completely. I tried to clean myself up as best I could, but it was useless. My makeup was beyond saving, and all I could do was wipe off the frosting and try to fix my hair. I was so angry I was shaking. I couldn't believe Jake had done this to me after I specifically told him not to. After he promised he wouldn't. I must have been in there for about 20 minutes when I heard shouting from the reception hall. At first, I tried to ignore it, but it got louder and louder. I couldn't make out the exact words, but I could tell people were arguing. Despite everything, I was curious about what was happening, so I cracked open the door and peeked out. I could now hear the shouting more clearly, and to my surprise, it was Frank's voice, Jake's usually quiet and reserved brother. I couldn't see what was happening from where I was, but I could hear Frank yelling things like "You never fucking change. And you promised her you wouldn't do this shit." After a few more minutes, the shouting died down, and there was a knock at the door of the bridal suite. It was Frank. His face was flushed, and he looked more upset than I'd ever seen him. "Are you okay?" he asked. I shook my head, not trusting myself to speak without crying again. "Jake has something he wants to say to you," Frank said, his jaw tight. "If you're willing to hear him out." I honestly didn't want to see Jake at that moment, but I nodded anyway. Frank disappeared for a minute and came back with Jake, who was looking at the floor. "Look at her." Jake reluctantly raised his eyes to meet mine. "I'm sorry," Jake mumbled, not sounding sorry at all. "Look her in the fucking eyes when you apologize," Frank said, his tone making even me flinch. Jake straightened up a bit and looked directly at me. "I'm sorry, okay? I didn't think you'd react like this. It was just supposed to be funny." I could tell he didn't mean it. He was only apologizing because Frank was making him, not because he actually thought he'd done anything wrong. The realization hit me hard. This man, who I just vowed to spend my life with, had deliberately ignored my clearly stated boundary, humiliated me in front of all our friends and family, and didn't even understand why I was upset. The weird thing was seeing Frank so angry. In the 4 years I'd known him, he'd always been this really chill, gentle guy. I've literally never seen him raise his voice before, so seeing him all red-faced and pissed off was honestly kind of scary. It was like he was a completely different person. Frank insisted on walking us back into the reception, which was now awkwardly silent. Everyone was just looking down at their plates or suddenly very interested in their drinks. Some people were whispering to each other, probably about the drama they'd just witnessed. The DJ tried to lighten the mood by playing an upbeat song, but no one was in the party mood anymore. I sat at our table, picking at my food and avoiding eye contact with everyone. Jake tried to act like nothing had happened, laughing and talking with his friends, occasionally putting his arm around me as if everything was fine. But everything wasn't fine. I was humiliated, angry, and worst of all, I felt betrayed by the person who was supposed to love and respect me most. The rest of the reception was painfully uncomfortable, and it ended much earlier than planned. Many guests made excuses to leave early, probably sensing the tension. By 10 p.m., what was supposed to be a celebration until midnight was basically over. I was so upset I couldn't even stand to be near Jake, so when Frank offered to drive me back to our apartment, I accepted immediately. Jake seemed annoyed but didn't argue, probably because Frank was still giving him death glares every time he opened his mouth. The car ride was quiet at first. I was staring out the window, trying not to cry again, when Frank broke the silence. "I'm sorry about what happened," he said. "And I'm sorry for losing my temper back there. I don't usually. It's just. Fuck, I've seen this shit too many times." "What do you mean?" I asked. Frank sighed deeply. "Jake's always been like this. Using special occasions to humiliate people for his own amusement. He thinks it's hilarious." He went on to tell me how when they were kids, Jake would throw cake at him on his birthdays or accidentally break his presents. One year, Jake replaced Frank's birthday candles with those trick ones that don't blow out, and when Frank got frustrated, Jake pushed his face into the cake in front of all his friends. Another time, Jake switched Frank's graduation gown with one several sizes too small just before the ceremony, making him scramble to find something to wear at the last minute. Their parents never did anything about it, just brushed it off as boys being boys or that's just how brothers are. Frank said he'd spent his whole life enduring Jake's pranks, but seeing him do it to me on our wedding day was the final straw. He realized his brother wasn't just immature, he was actually a bad person who enjoyed humiliating others. "I should have warned you," Frank said. "I've seen how he treats people, how he treats you sometimes, but I thought maybe he'd changed. Or that he wouldn't pull this shit on his wedding day, of all days. I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner." "It's not your fault," I told him. "I should have seen the signs myself." We sat in silence for a moment before I asked the question that had been on my mind since the cake incident. "Do you think I'd be overreacting if I left him over this?" Frank didn't hesitate. "No. Honestly, you deserve better than someone who gets off on humiliating you. And I don't give a shit how Jake feels about it because he brought it on himself." Before dropping me off, Frank offered to help me collect my things from our apartment if I decided to leave Jake. He gave me his number and told me to call him anytime if I needed anything. It was the first time since the incident that I felt like someone was actually on my side. I spent that night alone in our apartment, thinking about everything that had happened. Jake texted me several times asking where I was and why I hadn't come to the hotel with him. We were supposed to spend our wedding night at this fancy hotel before leaving for our honeymoon the next day. I ignored his messages. By morning, I'd made my decision. I texted Jake that I wanted a divorce. His response came almost immediately, "Are you fucking kidding me? Over a cake? Don't be ridiculous." I didn't respond, but over the next few hours, the texts started coming in from his family and even some of mine. His mother called me dramatic and said I was overreacting to a harmless tradition. His sister said I was too sensitive and needed to learn to take a joke. Even my own parents seemed to think I was making a mistake, saying things like all marriages have rough patches and don't throw away your relationship over one incident. But here's the thing, this isn't about cake. It's about the fact that I clearly stated a boundary multiple times, he promised he wouldn't cross it, and then he deliberately did exactly what I asked him not to do, in front of everyone we know, on what was supposed to be one of the most important days of our lives. How am I supposed to trust him about anything else? If he can lie to my face about this and then humiliate me for his amusement, what else will he do? What other promises will he break? What if we have kids someday and he thinks it's funny to embarrass them? And instead of genuinely apologizing, he's telling me I'm the problem for not finding my own humiliation funny? Fuck that. The day after the wedding, Jake finally came home to our apartment. He acted like everything was normal, like he expected me to just get over it. When I told him I was serious about the divorce, he got angry. He called me ungrateful, said I had no sense of humor, and that I was ruining his life over a stupid prank. He didn't even attempt to understand my perspective. I spent that night at my best friend Megan's place. I couldn't stand being around Jake anymore. I told her everything that had happened, and unlike everyone else, she actually understood why I was upset. She agreed that it wasn't about the cake itself but about the complete disregard for my feelings and boundaries. Jake's brother Frank is literally the only other person who seems to understand and support my decision. I'm going through with the divorce, or maybe an annulment since we've only been married for like 2 days, which someone mentioned might be possible. So, AITA for wanting to divorce my husband because he pushed my face into our wedding cake after I specifically asked him not to? Update. Wow, wasn't expecting this to blow up. Thank you for all the responses and support. Sorry for not replying to comments, things have been pretty chaotic and I've been trying to process everything that's happened. I've read all your comments though, and they've really helped me feel like I'm not crazy for feeling the way I do. Several people suggested getting an annulment instead of a divorce. Don't know why I didn't think of this earlier, probably because my brain has been a mess, but yes, that's the plan now. I spoke with a lawyer friend who said that given how short the marriage has been and the circumstances, an annulment should be possible. Haven't filed yet but will be doing so in the next few weeks. Should be much easier than going through a whole divorce since we've been married for such a short time, and honestly, the marriage feels like it was a sham anyway. A lot of people asked about the honeymoon. We were supposed to leave the day after the wedding for a 2-week trip to Hawaii that we'd been planning for months. Obviously, that didn't happen. Jake actually tried to convince me that we should still go, saying it would give us time to work things out and that it was already paid for anyway. As if I'd want to spend 2 weeks trapped in a hotel room with someone who just humiliated me. I told him to go by himself if he wanted to, but he didn't. So now we have to deal with getting refunds or credit for all that too. What a mess. So here's what happened after my original post. The day after I wrote it, I went to Jake's apartment, technically our apartment, but it doesn't feel like mine anymore, to collect my stuff. I've been staying at my best friend Megan's place in the meantime. I took up Frank's offer to help me, which turned out to be a good call. I was nervous about seeing Jake again, but having Frank there made me feel safer. We arrived around midday when Jake texted me he'd be home. The moment we walked in, I could tell Jake was surprised to see Frank with me. He looked like he hadn't slept much, which made 2 of us. Jake immediately started with the "it was just a prank" bullshit again and kept saying he didn't mean to hurt me. He tried to hug me when I first walked in, but I stepped back. He followed me around the apartment as I started collecting my things, saying stuff like, "Come on, babe, don't be like this and we can work through this, we just need to talk." But all I could think about was how he'd already broken my trust once and lied straight to my face, so why would I believe anything he says now? When Jake saw that Frank was actually helping me pack, not trying to talk sense into me like he probably expected, he completely lost it. His face turned this weird shade of red, and he started yelling about how Frank was poisoning me against him and trying to steal me away. Frank just calmly told him, "She made up her own mind. You did this yourself." Then Jake and Frank got into this huge argument where Frank brought up all the shit Jake had done to him when they were kids. Things I hadn't even heard about before. Jake just told him to grow a pair and get over it because it happened forever ago. Pretty rich coming from someone who clearly never grew up himself. At one point, Jake tried to physically block me from taking a box of my books, saying that we needed to sit down and talk about this like adults. The irony of him talking about acting like an adult after what he'd done wasn't lost on me. Frank stepped between us and told Jake to back off, which led to more yelling. I just continued packing while they argued. Jake kept trying to talk to me directly, but Frank basically acted as a buffer and made sure I could get my things without being harassed. It took about 2 hours to get everything I needed. I left a lot of stuff behind that I can get later or just replace, and the whole time Jake alternated between trying to apologize, getting angry, and accusing Frank of turning me against him. When we finally left, Jake slammed the door so hard I thought he might break it. I heard something crash inside as we walked to the car. I'm guessing he threw something. Frank helped me get everything to Megan's place, where I've been staying for the past few days. Later I found out from a mutual friend that Jake's been telling his family and friends that this is all Frank's fault, that he's been trying to steal me from Jake for years and that he finally found his opportunity. This is completely ridiculous for so many reasons. Frank and I have always had a friendly but distant relationship. We'd see each other at family events and get along fine, but we've never been particularly close. The idea that he's been plotting to steal me is absurd. Jake's just looking for someone to blame other than himself. Oh, and my family has been almost as bad as his. They've been spamming me with messages about how we should try therapy and not throw away a marriage over one mistake. My mom even had the nerve to say, "Every marriage has problems, you can't just run away at the first sign of trouble." As if deliberately humiliating your spouse on your wedding day after promising not to is just a normal marriage problem. They only stopped when I threatened to cut them off too. I told them that if they couldn't support me through this, then I didn't need them in my life right now. That finally shut them up. It's been about a week since the wedding now, and things have calmed down a bit. I'm still staying at Megan's place while I look for an apartment of my own. Jake has stopped texting me constantly, though he still sends the occasional message asking me to reconsider or telling me I'm throwing away something good over nothing. I've mostly been ignoring him. I had a meeting with a lawyer about the annulment. She also advised me to save all the texts and messages where Jake admits to what he did, just in case he tries to contest it. Frank has also offered to provide a statement if needed, which is really nice of him. Speaking of Frank, a lot of people in the comments suggested I should date him instead, which made me laugh. But so many people mentioned that Frank might have liked me, so I thought why not test him? This would have been just a test to see whether Frank had ulterior motives to help me or not. After all, he's been kinder to me through this whole ordeal than my actual husband was, so after we got my stuff from Jake's place and dropped it off at Megan's, I awkwardly asked Frank if he might want to get coffee sometime, just the two of us. He very politely turned me down and told me he's already seeing someone, a woman he met at work about 6 months ago. He was really nice about it, said he was flattered but that he thought I probably needed some time to heal from everything that happened before jumping into anything new. He also said it would make the whole situation with Jake even more complicated, which is fair. Honestly, this made me respect him even more, because it showed he wasn't helping me with any ulterior motives, he was just being a decent human being. We agreed to stay friends, and he's checked in on me a couple of times since then to make sure I'm doing okay. I told Frank about this post, and he said he read through some of the comments. He said they made his day and appreciated all the support from internet strangers. He especially liked the comments where people were telling me that he loves me, gave him a good chuckle. As for what's next, I'm focusing on taking care of myself right now. I've been going to work, took a couple of days off after the wedding but couldn't take more time, looking for an apartment, and trying to process everything that's happened. I'm thinking about seeing a therapist to help me work through all this, not to save my marriage like my family wants, but to help me deal with the feelings of betrayal and humiliation. This will probably be my last update on this situation. The annulment is in process, I'm moving on with my life, and I just want to put this whole mess behind me and move forward. Thank you all for your support. It really means a lot to know that there are people out there who understand why I'm upset and don't think I'm overreacting. Edit, to those calling my story fake because I tested Frank, whatever. I was acting on what many commenters suggested, and I figured asking once wouldn't hurt anyone. I'm not in the best state of mind right now, and I probably won't be checking this account anymore. I hope my story can at least help others recognize toxic behavior in their own relationships, regardless of gender. Edit 2. A couple people asked about the photographer and the photos. Yes, he took pictures of the whole cake incident. No, I haven't seen them and don't want to. Jake's friend Tom hired the photographer, another red flag I missed. Jake insisted his friend knew a guy who would give us a good deal, so I'm guessing Jake has the photos. He can do whatever he wants with them. I don't care anymore. Wishing you all the best.